Turn it over to Skid Rheault again to talk about developing and marketing a brand.
All right, let me try this out. Morning, y'all.
Morning.
That all right? No? All right. Before I start, I just want to say, I hope you all had a great time last night. I know I had a wonderful time. I drank a little bit too much, but I want to give a big shout out to Beth, Bill, Brian, Ted, and everybody who made this happen. Let's give them a round of applause. Leslie Sturman, who arranged travel to get me down here. The talk that I'm about to give is way too long for the 20-minute slot, but you can get the whole thing at a much slower pace on Leslie's website. So I know I'm not going to be able to finish it in the time allotted, so I'm just going to give that disclaimer, and rather than try and talk at New Yorkers 90-mile-an-hour pace, I'm just not going to get to the end.
The cliffhanger.
That's what it is. And I just have to comment, 500 million oysters in 10 years. So that's at 55 cents, we're talking $250 million. Put that in perspective, we're growing $60 million on the East Coast, another $60 million on the West Coast. So you're talking, forget it. Anyway, it's, you better think about marketing and reaching some latent markets and getting all those people in the middle of the country who've never tried a raw oyster to get hooked. Just saying, because we don't want to have what happened to the clam prices happen to the oyster prices. Because you work too hard to make chump change. So I guess I've got to say a few words. You've seen this slide. I won't bring that up. But so here we are, $67 million in oyster production, prices increasing. Predictions are it's going to double again in the next 3 to 5 years, and that was before I thought that way. So clam production is kind of flat. Prices are strong this year, but production has been kind of flat because we crashed the price about 15 years ago when everybody learned how to grow oysters and was selling them as a commodity. And we are not into selling a commodity, thank God. So this is what happens when you fix your regulations. I talked a little bit about, regulations will hold back the industry. Well, we were doing nothing in Rhode Island for decades until a couple stubborn pricks fixed the regulations and unleashed the entrepreneurial spirit of people who were able to grow exponentially. And proud to report that the value of oysters surpassed the harvest of the wild clam to become the top value product harvested in Rhode Island waters 2 years ago. And the value is doubling every 2 or 3 years. So it's pretty cool. And this is, you're seeing this in every state that is actually keeping records. And that's only 3 of the 14 states on the East Coast. I'm going to talk to you today about a brand that I built, the Moonstone brand, because it's what I know. And after 15 years, it was recognized nationally, being sold across the country. And I was able to calculate that it adds about 8% to the value of the product. And the reason I know that is because I started, all the kids who worked for me started their own farms and started selling into my markets at a nickel under my price. And I said, well, screw this is a race to the bottom. I'm going to start a co-op. I'll buy all your product and I'll sell it to all of my customers that I have established in Chicago and DC and get it out of the local market so we're not competing against each other and killing our prices. And the new guys didn't have an established name. Their oysters was just as good as mine, but their name had no recognition. And so the Moonstone was the flagship brand for the 7 farms. And I would say, well, we're out of Moonstones, but I got these East Beach Blondes that are really great. You ought to try them. And I couldn't get the same money for it, but I could eventually, in a couple of years, we were able to get their names established, and they're now getting what my brand was able to get. There wasn't really that much difference between the product. They're all doing what I was doing. They're all, growing. They learned from me. I taught them how to cull, how not to sell crap, and keep the quality up. So what are the secrets of success? Well, it's quality, persistence. Good name helps, but it's really not the end of the world to have a bad name, because if you have quality and a consistent product, you can sell a bad name. There's some awful names out there that are doing fine. But it's quality. So the difference between selling and marketing is the difference between being a price taker. You're a fisherman, you come to the wholesaler and you say, what are you going to pay me for this? And the price maker, which is I go to the restaurant and I say, I've got this wonderful product and it's worth this much money and this is why you're going to pay me this much money. And it's also the difference between survival and failure. So, the marketing 101 here. There's the product, there's the brand, and then there's the category. And now I've graduated, I've sold my farm, and I market the category. I no longer market a brand. But it's a little bit about, you know, so what's a brand? Well, you all know these brands. It's associated with a logo, a shape, a color. It promotes the product and often the category. It can take years to be established, and you can trash it overnight by getting somebody sick. So don't do that. Competition, and so I've seen this over and over again. If everybody is trying to sell to the same 25 white tablecloth restaurants in a 1-hour drive, you are going to see your price go down as soon as you get enough growers to saturate that local market. So you do not want to compete on price unless you can be the Walmart of producers and your cost of production is lower than everybody else's. Still don't do the Walmart of producers. I don't recommend that. Find another feature that sets your product apart. So what could that be? Service, salesmanship, price, product. How is your product unique? How can you market your product to your customers? And so that's what I'm going to be talking about. What does a consumer want? Well, they want all these things. And I'm not going to read it to you because that would be boring. But each of these is a way in which you can set yourself apart from the competition. And so find out what works for you. And in fact, you should probably try and do all of these. So quality, this joke's kind of sad, but the race for quality has no finish line, so technically it's a death march. But quality is the one starting point. That if you don't have quality, you can't really compete. And so it's a prerequisite. It's the baseline. So set your standards high and keep them high. I was a real stickler, and my crew hated me because I wouldn't let anything go out the door. My name is on that box. My reputation was on that box. My trademark is on that box. So, oysters are different. Every oyster is different. Not all of them are going to be beautiful. Don't put the crappy, snaggly ones in the box with your trademark on it. Find another customer for that product, sell it cheaper, and, it's good for Joe's Clam Shack. It's not the white tablecloth customer that's going to pay top dollar. Don't trash your brand and your trademark that you worked so hard to build by selling shoddy product under that name. Chefs want a predictable size, not a range. They want to know how many are going to fill the plate. Some of them want large, some of them want small, some of them want to have large and small. Cull, sort, separate, sell multiple size grades. Ask your customer what they prefer and give them what they want. This is marketing. Shape, you want to have deep cup, uniform shape. Sometimes they got a reverse hinge and you're going to do what Bill did to his hand. If you try and shuck it, you're going to stab yourself and hurt yourself. Don't put that in the box with your stuff. Pressure washing, I was a stickler. It's easy to do. It takes a fraction of a penny really to blast a bag real quick. And this is food, it's going in somebody's mouth. You don't want to have it smell like rotting seaweed. And it's a federal requirement. So, food safety. Society now has zero tolerance for an illness. So I've been eating oysters every week of my life, doing quality control, and I'm immunocompromised, and I've never gotten sick off an oyster. I've eaten thousands of oysters. We had 5 dozen Gulf Coast oysters in an oyster crawl a couple of years ago. I've had histamine poisoning from sushi twice. So, just saying. We have a great reputation, though, born from hundreds of years of getting people sick. Back before we had effective sewage treatment and effective regulatory controls. We now, thank God for the Clean Water Act and Ronald Reagan and the EPA, we've cleaned up our waters. We now have the ISSC, rigid controls. We have wonderful things that are protecting our consumers, and that is why we can demand the price we now have. And we can kill that reputation just as easily if we just built it back. It took us 100 years to get back to the price-adjusted price that we enjoyed 100 years ago, and that was because people back then didn't understand that bacteria caused disease and that all these people were dying of cholera because they thought disease was caused by bad air. They didn't understand bacteria caused disease. As soon as they figured out that the oysters were killing them, the oyster industry collapsed. And we are now, just now, getting back to the price that we enjoyed 100 years ago. And that's because people have the assumption that you can eat an oyster without getting sick. But we can kill that reputation just as easy as we build it. Now, keep your product cool. Harvest late in the day, harvest quick. There's a lot of, I've got a whole Vibrio presentation. There's a lot of Vibrio pamphlets out there. I could twist your ear about Vibrios, but this is really, you know, and one illness can trash your trademark really quickly. Vibrio grows really fast at high temperatures. And the only way to stop it is to get your product down below 50 degrees as fast as you can. There's a lot of ways to skin this cat, harvest fast, harvest early, bring out ice. More than 2 hours is probably too long. In your state, your regulations are going to vary. But really, the gold standard is make a slurry dip. Like Andy was saying, plunge your oysters into that slurry dip. Your goal is to have that bath at about 40 degrees. Too much colder, and you will kill the oyster or damage the shelf life. But yes, they will survive. Clams, don't do it. You will kill your clams. But oysters are hardy little beasts, and they will survive. And it's a great way to stop any potential post-harvest growth. Got to do it. Get your market, you know, get it to the market as fast as possible. If you can have your product to your grower or to your wholesaler with the same date, you know, we would harvest, break it down, run it in, pack it up, get it on the truck. 24 hours later, it's in Washington, D.C., Jessup Market. This is possible with the trucks and delivery mechanisms that we have around the country today. We have a wonderful infrastructure for getting fresh seafood around the country fast and cheaply. Flavor. So you can't really change the flavor of your oyster. You can salt it up there. You can do wet storage. That's another story. But if you've got, you can celebrate the differences in flavors and you know, the uniqueness of that flavor. And so briny, sweet, salty, those adjectives are all overused. So talk to some wine snob and get them to help you work on the adjectives to describe your product. And use other adjectives than briny and sweet, because everybody uses the same. Modulate your supply so you can have a year-round delivery. The goal is to get on the restaurant's menu. Once you're on their menu, I mean, nowadays it's a little different. They're printing their menus on a daily basis, some of these restaurants. And so, but if you have an interruption in supply, you will be replaced by competition. And then you have to win that customer back. And so that's a whole another conversation you want to have. Packaging. So, you know, clean, well-designed package, wax box, pretty cheap. Onion sacks turned inside out, that's for sellers, not marketers. That's what the wild harvest people use. You know, and the box art is a great opportunity to tell your customers why your product is better than your competition's. All the things that are wonderful about my product are on the side of the box. And then here's a neat tip, the best thing I ever tried. Get some waterproof paper from Forestry Supply, print it on, you know, all the attributes of your thing and slip it in each box. Oftentimes I would go and I'd do a delivery and I'd see that pinned to the restaurant's cork board, and it's like me being able to do a chef education in every restaurant, even though I can't travel to Chicago and do that. And so the customer has a question about moonstones, and they go, oh, yeah, I'll go to the cork board and I'll get that little sheet, and this is all about moonstones. Where is it costs you pennies. Print it on a laser printer so that when it gets wet, the ink doesn't run, because if you use an inkjet, the ink just bleeds right off. Print them up, put them in waterproof paper, and I'm glad that's not me. And you know, so entering new markets, like I say, you want to get out of the local markets, and you're going to tell me when I run out of time, right? So, you know, I would go into Chicago. First, I'd go on to Zaggett's. I'd find the 3 highest priced oyster bars in Chicago, and I'd call them up, and I'd make an appointment, jump on a plane with a cooler full of oysters, and I would go there and make my pitch, because a face-to-face pitch, you know, call them up, make an appointment, 11 o'clock in the morning, and get your product on their menu. Chefs talk, and they're going to say, well, where'd you get that wonderful oyster? And, you know, and suddenly I was getting calls from restaurants in Chicago that wanted to buy moonstones that I had never even made a marketing call to. So that's one way to do it. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of expense, but in the long run, it's worth it. So selling direct versus selling wholesale. There's a cost to being your own dealer, a lot of costs. Everybody wants to capture that. They think the wholesaler is taking 30% of the price of the product. Typically, wholesalers are adding about 10%. But if you want to do this yourself, first of all, you better have the skills. There are people who should never be talking to the customer. My partner was a perfect example of a misanthrope who should never be talking to other people. He was a great farmer, hard worker, and we made a great team because I was never a great farmer, but I was a good pitchman. And so I was willing to do the weekly calls and lots of road trips and get all the permits and the HACCP and become HACCP trained. And there's a lot involved in becoming a dealer. Expensive permits, overhead work, your 3-bay stainless steel sink, and all that stuff. And then you got to chase down money. This was something I never dreamed. I'm going to spend half a day a week chasing checks from restaurants. Why don't you pay your bills? What am I, credit service? No, I pay my bills. Why don't you pay yours? And keep a tight rein on your credit. If they don't pay within 30 days, don't send them more oysters, because you will find that they will go out of business owing you $5,000, open up the next day under a new name, and have the gall to come back and call you for product. Yes, this happened to me. You can't make it up. So no wholesaler is ever going to be as passionate about your product as you are. Oftentimes, wholesalers can have a price list, and they got moonstones and this and this and this is the price and that's what it is. And they might, if they do a really good job, like Pangea or some of the others, they'll have all the attributes of the product on there, and they'll do a pretty good job. But they are never going to have the passion that a grower is going to have. They are never going to be able to sell the story like the grower is going to be able to sell. And nowadays, more than ever before, selling the story is what sells the product. They want to know about your farm, they want to know about your dog, they want to know about your cousin, how hard it is, how you're busting 7 inches of ice. Oh wait, you don't have ice. Oh, anyway. The best thing about it, doing the weekly deliveries, is I get weekly feedback from the chef. I would go in the door and it'd be, hey, Moonstone Bob, how you doing? You got the best oyster in the world. And that would just make the whole week of work just flow off my back. That kind of praise was awesome to me. And if something was wrong with my product, I would get the immediate feedback. And if you sell through a wholesaler, you're lucky if you ever hear about that box that got there and there were all these complaints and they had to refund the money. And if you do get it, it's like 3 weeks later, and that's too late. I want to be able to fix the problem right away. Ask for recommendations from the chefs you're working with. Is there somebody else I should be talking to if I need to expand my market? Selling wholesale. So, above a certain volume, direct sales are going to be challenging. You start to try and chase money from 100 chefs a day. And if you're selling into 2 levels of the marketplace, you're trying to sell to a wholesaler and a chef directly, make sure you give your wholesaler a margin to make money on, because he's going to quickly get pissed off at you if you are selling at the same price that you're selling to him. That kind of direct competition will typically lose you a good wholesaler. If you do sell to a wholesaler, that does not mean you can stop marketing. I still advise you to do what I did when I started moving out of doing direct sales into wholesale sales. I would go and say, okay, you're a wholesaler in Baltimore. Who's your best customer? Who moves the most oysters? I'm going to come down. I'm going to do a visit. I'm going to talk to your 3 best customers. And no, I'm not going to steal those customers and sell direct. But I want to upsell them. I want to tell them why my product is so great, and tell them the story. But do the pitch face to face, and you'll sell more of my product, and you'll make more money, and I'll make more money, and we will do better together. I say never stop marketing. So what's in a name? Like I said, good names. I think there are good names. I was really fortuitous. I picked the name of a nude beach in Rhode Island. I sell a lot of T-shirts that say "Harvested naked, eaten raw." Lesser choices are names that are unpronounceable or have a less desirable image. Harbor. But you can still make money with a bad name if you have a great quality product. Sell the story. I already said this. Sexy innuendo. It helps. We're humans. I always say, you know, is it true about the aphrodisiac? Well, I think we're still collecting data. And sustainability. In 30 years of selling oysters, I never had a customer once ask me, is your product sustainable? And I am very proud of the fact that we are one of the most sustainable products in the world. Certification, I don't think it's worth it. You'll never recover that money. Frankly, you're going to do better using words like fresh, nutritious, safe. These are, you know, all good questions. And at this point, you know, never stop marketing. Put it on your t-shirt. All my stuff is monogrammed. And I was flying on a plane, because I do that a lot lately, and a woman sitting next to me goes, oh, what do you do? Oh, my cousin's, suddenly I had a sale. You know, I didn't even try to make the sale, but if you have monogram stuff, you can make sales. And I got a lot more, but you have to look at the website.
We'll also share it, yeah. All right, thank you, Skid. Appreciate it.